So what are we doing? Multiplying signed numbers and using absolute value. That's what we're going to do. So our first key idea is going to be about multiplying signed numbers. We did this last year, so hopefully this will come back to you. We can use our knowledge of the English language to discover a mathematical truth. When you say, I ain't got no money, do you know what you're really saying? What do you think you're really saying? Well, that's what you're trying to say. And that would be the better way to say it. I don't have any money. But if you say, I ain't got no money, this is a negative word. That's a negative word. They cancel each other out. What you're actually saying is, I have money. When you say, I don't have no intention of studying for that test. Do you see your double negative in the sentence? Don't and no. Well, two negatives reverse each other, meaning I will study. They cancel each other out. That's what happens when you have two negative words in the same sentence. They cancel each other out. Now let's continue using the English language to demonstrate this. Do you know what the opposite of like is? Dislike. So what's the opposite of dislike if we use that same concept? Well, it would be dislike, which is the reverse of like, which takes you right back to like, right? What's the opposite of familiar? Unfamiliar. Well, if we use this same concept, what's the opposite of unfamiliar? Unfamiliar. And the two uns cancel each other out, taking you right back to familiar. So with some sentences and some words, we're demonstrating what happens when you have a double negative. From this, we can see that a double opposite, another word for a double negative, takes you right back to the original word. That same concept works in math when you're multiplying or dividing. What we're going to study today are rules that only work with multiplying and dividing signed numbers. When multiplying or dividing signed numbers, a double negative always takes you back to a positive result. So the opposite of like was dislike. When we put another dis in front of dislike, the double negative takes us right back to like, a positive thing. That same concept is going to work with signed numbers when you are multiplying or dividing. All right, make a paper airplane to help you learn the rules for multiplying and dividing signed numbers. So on the front of the plane, that's the positive end. I want you to put a big plus sign on the front of the plane. So I'll have to draw mine here. So on the front of the plane, put your plus sign, because that's the front end of the plane. That's the positive end of the plane. At the rear of the plane, put a big negative sign. That's the back end or the negative end of the plane. An updraft is a positive force. When wind is blowing up, that's a updraft. That's a positive force. A downdraft, when the wind is blowing down, a downdraft is a negative force. All right? So the front of the plane's positive, the back of the plane is negative. An updraft is positive, a downdraft is negative. Does all that seem kind of normal? Like you would have called the front positive and the back negative. Up is positive, down is negative. All right, pick up your airplane. Okay, let's see what happens with this first scenario right here. An updraft pushing on the front makes the plane fly in what direction? Hold your plane up. If an updraft, use your hand to represent updraft. An updraft, okay, well, use one hand to hold the plane. The other hand is the updraft. Okay, so you've got your plane. Here's my plane. An updraft, let's see, updraft pushing on the front of the plane, okay, makes the plane fly which way? Which is positive. Okay. Now, same plane, hold it with one hand. This time, we're going to do the second scenario, and updraft, which is positive, pushing on the back of the airplane. So if an updraft pushes on the back of the airplane, what's going to happen? It's going to make it go down, which is negative. Third scenario, we're going to switch to downdrafts now. A downdraft pushes on the front of the plane. So take your plane, downdraft, makes it go down. Last scenario, a downdraft pushing on the back of the plane. It is going to make it go up. Now, if you can visualize this happening when you're doing multiplication and division with signed numbers, it's going to help you figure out if your final answer is positive or negative. So let's switch over to the next page and summarize these rules. At the top of the page here, a positive multiplied by a positive or divided. So that's like an updraft hitting the front of the plane. What did we end up with? A positive. If an updraft hits the front of the plane flies up. That's positive. Here's the second scenario, guys. A negative would be like a downdraft, and a negative, that'd be like the back of the plane. Where did the plane fly when a downdraft hit the back of the plane? It flew up. That's a positive. Third scenario, what happened when an updraft hit the back of the plane? Down. And the last scenario, what happened when a downdraft hit the front of the plane? Down. Now, if you can visualize the airplane, it's going to help you learn these rules. Put a summary. But let me summarize them even more for you. Look up here, the very first scenario. You're multiplying or dividing two positives. The sign is the same, two positives. You get a positive. The second scenario, you're multiplying two negatives or divided two negatives. What kind of answer did you get? A positive. So, when the signs are the same, and you're multiplying or dividing, this only works with multiplying and dividing. If your signs are the same, your answer will be positive. But look at this third scenario. A positive multiplied or divided by a negative gives us a negative. You see here we're dealing with two different signs. Or a negative multiplied or divided by a positive where our signs are different. Our answer was negative in both situations. So if you have different signs with the numbers you're multiplying or dividing, your answer will be negative. So let's use those rules to do these problems right here. Your brain needs to come up with the answer in 2 steps. The first thing you need to decide is, will my answer be positive or negative? And then you come up with the digit. So for number 1, Elena, we've got 3 times -4. We've got a positive times a negative. We have an updraft hitting the back of the plane. What's my final answer going to be? Negative. Now we're multiplying 3 times 4. What is 3 times 4? 12.
Oh, I forgot it was like that.
Yeah, we're multiplying. All right, Mia, with the second one, a negative times a negative, a downdraft hitting the back of the plane. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Well, actually, it's going to be positive. And 3 times 4 is still 12. Elena, 2 positives. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Positive. And 3 times 4 is 12. Mia, a downdraft hitting the front of the plane causes the plane to fly which way? Negative. 12. Mia again. Number 5, 2 negatives. A downdraft hitting the back of the plane. Positive. And what's 2 times 6? Elena, downdraft, front of the plane. What's my answer going to be? Negative 12. Mia, updraft hitting the back of the plane. Negative 12. Elena, updraft hitting the front of the plane. Positive 12. And guys, when it's positive, you can write a plus sign, but most people don't. Most people will just write a 12, but you can write a positive if you want to. All right, good. All right, let's go to our second key idea, which we've already done this year. We did it last year, okay? Absolute value. Hey, Mia, how far is 15 from 0 on the number line? No, it's just 15 steps. If you started at 0 and counted over to 15, you'd go 15 steps. Elena, how far is negative 29 from 0 on the number line? 29 steps, because we're just asking the distance, how many steps. When you want to know the distance a number is from 0 on the number line, you can ask the question without writing all of these words. You can ask the question by placing 2 vertical bars around the number. Each of these, I've given you 3 examples, each of these is asking for the distance from the number to 0. So, Elena, this is asking, what's the distance from 0 to 55? What's the answer? It is. Mia, the second one, what's that distance? It is 18. Elena, this third one, what is that distance? 5/7. So now we're going to combine your positive negative rules and absolute value to solve another set of problems. This is going to take a little bit more time. Mia, look at number 1 with me. Before we can answer this, we have to address that distance question. We have to answer that distance question first. So show your work underneath, you too, Elena. Mia, first answer this distance question and tell me what you get. That is 5 times 3. Now, Elena, what is 5 times 3?
15.
It is 15. And you didn't say positive, but the fact that you did not say negative makes me think you intended for that to be a positive answer. Okay. All right, Elena, for this second one, we do have a multiplication problem, but we have these distance questions we have to answer first. So, whoops, my video's too long.